we should introduce you at least, Fee. So hello everyone, and welcome to the Relentless podcast. Today, me, Sophie, and Marcus. My name is John, by the way. I keep forgetting. Is gonna have a little chat with Fee Saghafi, the pretty much. Let's say you were a little bit of an underdog for qualifying this year, but you managed to qualify out of the East, of course, because you're stationed in Florida.
Yeah, the North America East semifinal this year. Yeah, one of the two North America semifinals.
Gotta ask just right off the bat, because we watched it religiously. Of course, we like the first semi and so on, and we saw when the speaker on the floor announced your name. Your reaction was pretty cool, right? How did that feel?
Oh my gosh, just thinking about it already makes me emotional. It's crazy. It's like I didn't know where I was going to finish because my last two events went not to plan and I didn't execute the way that we were hoping to. And so it's just, you never know. And you just hope that it was enough. And you hope that the earlier days were enough points. And you hope that the right people were able to give you enough cushion. Like there's just so many things that could have gone in a different way, and just a couple seconds here and there could have just completely changed the outcome, just like you've seen maybe in even other semifinals. So when they announced, I finished and I did very bad on that last event, and I finished and I crossed. I was the last one in that last heat to cross, and I look at my husband, my fiance and my family, and I asked, was that enough? And was the first thing that came out of my mouth. I was like, did I make it? Like immediately. And they're like, we don't know the points. Like he's an accountant, and my his sister is also an accountant, so they're always doing the math, like how many points away. And I was like, was that enough? I don't know. They're like, we don't know. Like, and I was freaking out. And then at one point, I think I turned to them too, and I was just like, I didn't make it. Like I was like, that was it. I messed up again. And I was just like praying. And anyway, so then eventually someone comes over and says, you guys got to stand on your mat and you got to look to the screen, and we're announcing. And we're going to start from, Emma, who got first, to last place. And they're going through, and I'm like, and then I hear Sydney's name get called. I was like, man, she bumped up a lot of spots. And I was like, if she bumped up a lot of spots, I must have fallen a good amount, because I was 7th going into it. And 7th has always kind of been that number that I, for some reason, just fall into that. And I wasn't 7th. So I was worried. And, the cameras start going, and you eventually get an idea of like who's getting announced. But sometimes there's two cameras, one for one person, one for the other, kind of build the suspense. And I didn't really like notice the camera on me, because I was just like looking at the screen, like what the heck is about to be called. And then they called my name, and it almost felt like a cinder block was just like taken off my shoulders. And I feel like I was just like, hallelujah, like, I'm getting emotion already. Like I could still feel those emotions. And it was just like, you fall to your knees just because like, man, like there are so many emotions, and you didn't know what the outcome was going to be. And it finally became the outcome that you wanted and you worked so hard for. So man, I turned to the crowd. I remember I turned to the crowd. I turned to my family. I threw my hands up in the air and I screamed, finally, at the top of my voice. There's an awesome picture that so many photographers got. Yeah, I got so
everyone
many.
got it.
Oh my God. And I screamed finally, like as if like, like you said, the weight was taken off. And yeah, what a moment. I keep looking at that video because the days are really hard. The training's really hard, and I find myself going back to that moment a lot, because I dreamt of that moment. Like, man, I would have so many dreams of like hearing my name, because I've never had my name called for anything. Because even when I got my invitation in 2019, it was a weird qualification year where you could get it through the Open, you could get it through other things, and it didn't feel like I ever like officially earned something until this year. So it was nice.
Because the semis, they are that is the Crucible, right? That's the tough one to get across. That is when you could get in through the Open or something else, that was a different game, wasn't it? Like,
yeah, it was different. It was, it definitely wasn't the same. You didn't have to, in 2019, you didn't have to earn it live. If you made it if you were the top 20 or 25, 30 best in the world, whatever that cut line was, they considered the national champions, they considered a whole bunch of other people. And that was a huge roster of athletes that were able to be included at the games, and the cuts and all of that. So it almost felt like, I earned it through the open, through 5 events. And I actually wasn't expecting it. So when I got the email, I was like, oh, hey, how it's like exciting. But I didn't feel what I felt, this time around. It was
almost wild card-ish, right? To get in like that.
Yeah. And then, 2020 was COVID, and, it was kind of still the same. It was still the same format in 2020 before, COVID. So it was still earn it through the open. If you don't get it through the open, you get it live at Sanctionals. At the time it was called Sanctionals. So anyone that had already qualified through the open that just happened to be competing at that respective Sanctional, the bid went to that next person. So I was at like a Sanctional called Mayhem Classic, and that's where Tia was competing, Danielle Brandon was competing, Christy Arama was competing. They all podiumed, and I got 4th. So in that year, that bid went to the 4th place, which was me that year. And then, January, February comes around, COVID is like, the biggest thing in the world. And so, invites, and then Sanctionals got canceled, invites got rescinded. The only people that made virtual COVID were the open finishers. So so that was just like a weird year. And then, kept missing it after that.
This is a proper year. It feels like this is the first real proper year in a while, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of talk about this time around that the semis were favoring the powerful and a bit heavier athlete this time around. I think doing muscle up with a weighted vest and etc. And the rope pulls and the rope pulls all machines, and the running in that event didn't account for all the other things. So may I ask, what's your body weight?
Yeah. So actually, my body weight fluctuates between 132, 135.
Everybody takes a calculator and tries to figure out what that is in kilos.
Yeah, what are we in kilos? What is that?
It's like 58 kg.
Wow.
58, 59.
Something around there.
So
I've actually
my guesstimate would be that you're probably going to be the lightest. Qualifier. I think and that's like it makes the performance, in my opinion, I think it makes it even better.
It does.
Considering that the competition was a bit biased. Cool, very cool.
That's always tough. It's like at some point that can't even be a thought in your mind. Because then you could always find an excuse to not perform. And I always we talk a lot about this with my coach, especially that as soon what in training and when we take the floor, but especially when we take the floor, the only thing that matters is how we execute to our plan. And no one else matters. No one else's plan matters. No one else's results matter. No one else's strategy should affect your strategy. And he actually had, we had a team meeting before semifinals. So on Thursday afternoon before briefings, we just collectively got together, and he was just very clear that we've done what we needed to do, and the only thing that we needed to focus on was our execution. And if we focus on our best execution, we will all be making it to the games, because the capacity is there, the strength, the preparation is there. We all had moments, great moments individually. And then we also all had moments that we learned from, and we got exposed, and some more than others. And I definitely got exposed, and still, but that's just kind of the nature of it. And you wouldn't want it any other way, because when you do have a good moment, it just tastes so much sweeter. But I've always I've just been, I'm 5'1", I weigh, my weight's not going to much change, but it's cool. I've been working a lot on my strength. So it's just really just so encouraging to see that the progress is there. Strength takes so long to build, and it sometimes takes years and years and years for anyone to ever see a little bit of progress. So it was cool to just have a couple moments like that.
So talking about strength, it's like, sorry, Sophie, what did you say? Sorry.
I was gonna ask what was your like most, except for you qualifying, what was the best moment of the weekend? Like the one that you're most proud of?
That's I love the best moment of my week. So this is crazy. So the best moment of my weekend was the snatch event, was the 1RM snatch after, the 100-meter jog buy-in. Like we were all just jogging. Yeah. And I think I got somewhere in like 20 something place finish. Not top, but it was, and the reason it was because my favorite was because every semifinal, every competition that I've ever done, it's always the lifting that kept me out of qualifying, because it was always the lift that put me down in like the top 20, or not even top 20, I'm sorry, outside of the top 20, maybe like close to 30th place finish. And it was never enough points for me to come back, even though I would have, maybe 4th, 5th, 6th place finishes in all the other events. It was always the lift that just kept me so far out. Every single year leading up to that lifting event this year, I was very nervous for it, because this is just like, I don't want history to repeat itself. I've been working very hard on my strength. You just hope that everything comes together. And I was missing my opening lifts in the back, which was 165 pounds, kilos, somewhere, I don't know where. But 165 pounds was my opening lift, and I had missed it a couple times. And I knew the plan was 180 pounds to like be happy with. I would be so happy with 180. And I was just very nervous. And one of the coaches, not Matt Torres, another coach, Dom D'Agostino, we're warming up and we're taking a couple extra lifts in the back, and he comes up to me. He noticed that I was very like nervous for this event, and I hadn't been nervous leading up to that really. And he comes up to me, he goes, I don't care, he was like, whatever you're thinking in your head, just every time you step up to that bar, you need to rip that bar as if it's your ticket to the CrossFit Games. There's nothing else that I need you to think about. You're ripping that bar over your head as if every time you step to that bar, this is your ticket. Nothing else matters. And it just like sparked like something like in me was like, okay, I'm not thinking about my hips down, my chest up. I'm not thinking about my technique. I'm just thinking about ripping this thing, because this is it. So we go out, we take the floor, we're lifting, we're starting our lifts, and I hit my first lift, made it when I like missed it a couple times in the back. Second lift, I bumped up 175, hit. The plan was 180, and we had talked about 180 the entire week leading up to it. And I look at the clock, everyone's, some people are missing, some people are making. I'm like, I gotta go for it. Like, we talked about 180. I was like, I got 15 seconds on the clock. I'm going to hate myself if I don't go for it. So I slap on, 2.5 pounds. And within 5 seconds, I put my hands on the bar, rip it over my head. And I've never made that lift ever. And I haven't lifted anything over 170 in, over 6 months. And I made it. Really, it was one of those moments, and I'm like, oh, like it just felt like it floated up. By the end of the weekend, we come to realize, because my execution wasn't good on the last day, the 185 gave me enough buffer points to make it to the games this year.
Wow.
So if I had lifted 180, I wouldn't have been making it to the games. But because I chose to, kind of risk it a little bit on that last lift, that 185 gave me enough points. It was the first time that a lift allowed me to succeed and make it to the CrossFit Games. So that was my favorite moment.
I'd say it's your mindset that made you succeed rather than the lifting in itself.
Yes, lifting has always been hard for me, because it's just the confidence behind it. I just get in my head a lot sometimes. And so that's been the biggest struggle, just building that confidence and building just kind of the grittiness that you have to have when you're lifting, and you can't allow bad thoughts. As soon as it's almost like, any other sport, once your mind starts to take over, your body responds to what you say. And lifting is one of those monsters that you could easily fall into some bad self-talk and not perform the way that you can. So it was a really cool moment of just like, man, it's always in there. Like, it's always in there. I just gotta find it. I gotta tap into it.
The semifinals in general, like overall, how did it go? Your expectations versus, or your plans versus the actual execution?
Yeah, so in my mind, I had a certain expectation, and I truly wanted to like be a little bit closer to the podium. I wanted to be, top 5. I wanted my execution to reflect way better than what it was. I think there were certain things that there were a lot of things that I look back and I'm like, okay, we need to practice a more, high skilled handstand walking. That was a struggle. The pirouettes were a big struggle for me. I'm generally pretty okay at body weight movements, but the skill of handstand walking is a struggle because I developed such bad habits very early on when I first started CrossFit. And since I've only been working with my coach for 2 years, but I've only been working with him like directly for like since November. So I've never really had like the true coaching that I needed to really be successful in very specific areas of the sport. So I got exposed in the areas that I realized that I knew I was going to be exposed. I just didn't think I was going to be that bad, come game time on some events. I had the handstand walking pirouette, or that first event on Sunday was the gymnastics one, overhead squat, rowing, handstand walking. All the other movements were great for me, like strict handstand push-ups and legless rope climbs. And in the back, I was warming up for that event and I wasn't missing my pirouettes. I was like, oh man, these are locked in today. Like, we're going to have a great event. And I get to the first pirouette and I miss. And then eventually, it's like, oh my God, like, all these thoughts, oh my God, this is the first pirouette. I have 3 more to go. I have an entire workout to go. I wasn't missing any in the back. Like, you're freaking out. And the only thing you can do is drop and rest and tell yourself something good before you go. And there was just so many mental moments. And the last event was hard for me. The biking and we're just working on that. Like, that's just like, biking and power output is something that I work on all year long. And sometimes I don't look like it, but I'm working on it so hard. And it's just, I gave what I had. But yeah, there were a lot of learning moments, very specific to specific events and skills or just execution. But I wasn't surprised. I was expecting to get exposed. I'm just happy I wasn't so exposed that it kept me out, a third year.
Like Marcus said, this year they clearly favored the bigger, powerful athlete because of reasons, and you making it despite that. Let's just assume that it won't be as biased in the games for the same type of athlete. Then you're probably gonna do some damage this year. I don't think you're gonna do really good. So
I'm really hoping that I think the most stressful part for me so far has been actually semifinals, because I've struggled to make it to the games. So I feel like the most like truly like mentally stressful season has already passed, and now I get to just truly just have fun and express and celebrate my hard work, whatever the results are. I really hope that my 100% looks the way that I'm hoping it does, but that's not my biggest worry. Is not podium or getting a specific spot this year.
So when we're talking about mentality, what has been the difference for you preparing for semifinals this year and now preparing for the games?
So preparing for semifinals was very it was just all very, it was hard because everything as athletes at Brute Strength, we're all very specific to, we all have our individualized programming. So once the events came out, actually, it was nice to see the events and first be like, okay, I've been preparing for all of these. Like, there's nothing that I'm not ready for, other than maybe, the pirouettes and the skills. Wasn't preparing as much for that. But there was a confidence going into I had a lot of confidence going into semifinals, because we had known the events, we practiced them, we had in the off season, we've done really, really good preparation thanks to my coach. And now going into the games, I'm actually still hammering a lot of my holes and my weaknesses, and there's only so much that you could accomplish in 6 weeks. But that still maintains the focus. It's not like you qualify for the games and all of a sudden I'm doing like a whole other program just because it's the CrossFit Games. I'm still working on the heavy, the odd objects, the sprints, the power output. So that's still my focus. And it's nice because when I'm in a training camp that actually you have podium contenders within the brute strength training camp, which is amazing. Yep. And to be surrounded by that in a way where I feel like I could still get exposed and learn from Emma, exposed and learn from Danielle, and hopefully I'm able to do the same when it comes to certain training pieces for them. So there's that push and pull constantly. But training for the games is a lot more volume, a lot more intensity, a lot more of everything, but it's still just as I would say I still feel healthy mentally. When it comes to just the excitement to go into it, I feel like I have almost like the rookie excitement still. What I had maybe my first year, I still have it going into it this year. So everything that I do, I'm just very grateful to be able to do it. Even though the training's very hard, it's an opportunity for me to just show all that hard work alongside, my training partners.
So it's a happy to be there kind of thing.
It's a little bit of both. Like, I'm so excited to compete. Like, obviously, like I love competing and I love beating people. Like, that is just like the competitor side.
Yeah.
The other side of me is like, man, like I look at it as this. I think as a competitor, there's a lot of people that hold competing as like one of the most important things in their life, in their season, in their chapter, in their day. And they will do anything at all costs to get first place. And if it's not first place, it's a loss, right? So anyone that has that mindset, they look at someone like me and they're like, oh, if he's just like, she doesn't care. They might think that I'm just happy to be there. I'm grateful to be there. And I'm grateful to be there. There's a difference between being content being there, and there's a difference between actually having like a sense of gratitude and honor, because none of that is promised. I've done a lot of things to change, my season and who I'm developing as an athlete, and with that comes a lot of stress. So yes, I'm more grateful and honored to be able to do this and represent people that I represent, my culture, my country, all those things. Mm-hmm. So when I do compete, I'm going to give 100% and I'm going to be fierce and competitive and gritty. And I'm not going to think that, oh, whatever happens, happens. Like I'm going to give my best. But competing is also not the most important thing in my life. So even if I don't place the way that I want to place, or I don't get first, or I don't get top 10, or I don't get whatever, I know I'm going to walk away so proud because I've done so much. And I've changed so much and I've improved in so many ways that it's going to be very hard for me to be upset at myself. And to have not competed at the games for a long time and to get that chance again, I take it it's so much more sweeter to me. It's so much more special than maybe someone that, is expected to always get there. I'm not expected to get there, nor do I expect that's out of myself every year. So I'm just very honored. I'm not just like happy.
Do you have an outcome goal there? Like, do you have I want to place at least something?
Yeah, my goal is top 15. I want to be top 15. I think I absolutely believe I could do it if like I said, if my execution is there, because I've just proven to myself and to my coach, and I know my coach believes that more than anyone as well. I just trust that the capacity is there. So it's going to be a season to be exposed once again, to learn, but to also like really truly tap into the things that I believe I could do. So I would love to earn, a top 15 spot at the games. But you don't really focus on that.
No.
By the start of the weekend, your focus is the first event, boom. Second event, on third, like it's a one event at a time thing. So, but that's the end.
Mm-hmm. So do you work with a special coach when it comes to mental stuff? Do you have like a mental coach?
I don't. I don't have a mental coach.
So how do you go through that process? I mean, like all things you're mentioning, it seems like you have. I mean, you have probably evolved the last 10 years, I guess, and even the last 5 years, or maybe even the last 3 years, from what I'm hearing. So, tell us a little bit about that process. I mean,
yeah, I've never had a mental coach, and I think everyone, I always believe that everyone should, you don't have to have these deep, dark rooted problems to be able to have, conversations about hard things, because everyone deals with hard things, and so do I. I think what's helped me though is my family keeps me very grounded. My relationship, I have very good relationships in my life, and I think that's what I thank God for, gifting me a very good husband, a fiance, and family that's so supportive, and actually I'm so lucky to be able to come from an entire community of people at CrossFit Mentality, but also at so many different gyms around in the Cleveland area that I feel that even just I've gotten a chance to connect with. And there's something very powerful of you going through this very special journey that you're choosing to go on. And for some reason, people go on it with you, not because they have to, but because they truly just want to see you succeed. And that has given me so much, like I said, gratitude. And I just feel so much love. So like, even though if I don't qualify or if I don't finish the way that I'm hoping to finish, I feel so much love and support. And I had talked to Sophie about this, like, I'm not scared to fail, whatever we consider failing, because I have those people that keep me grounded and deep and rooted to who I am. And competing is not something I have to do. It's not the only thing. It's a very, small chapter of my life. But I think the relationships that come out of competing are the most beautiful ones. And that's going to be with me for the rest of my life. So when things are hard and when things are frustrating and I get sad, or maybe I feel like I'm not progressing, that's what I lean on, and that's what I think about. And I think that'll always, be the most important and the most infinite thing. And how I place in a competition is very finite, and it'll come and it'll go. And I think how we treat people with kindness and how we love on people and how we support others, that's what stays. And that's just that fuel that kind of just keeps me going.
All right.
Powerful.
Cool. Very nice.
I think you answered this question with not as precise words. So what I'm going to ask is like, so what I've noticed is that amongst many athletes, it's like there are different kind of characteristics. And from what I can tell, those who have like matured and been in the game for a long time, they tend to be not 24/7 athletes. They tend to, to not be serious all the time. They're like those who are able to like get away from the stress of weighing all the food, thinking about the next session and thinking about the next event, etc., thinking about other stuff, changing environments, etc. So the question is, how much of other things are you doing? How much do you how much of your willpower do you spend on other stuff than actual, only thrusters and burpees?
Yeah, everything in my day pretty much at this point revolves around how well I'm recovering, how well am I prepared for the next session. And so it just happens to be that part of the season that, everything that I say no to like a lot of things just so I could be at home, I could sleep, I could recover, I could eat healthy meals and not be going out. I'm not as disciplined as weighing my food every single day to the gram. I sometimes do it throughout the week, but that's like truly like, someone would consider like a hole or maybe an area that still needs improvement. I just eat as much as I can, to be honest. I'm definitely not an overeater, and I'm definitely not someone that eats unhealthy, but I don't weigh things to the gram or to the ounce. I do have a scale at home that sometimes I do. It's more so to make sure I'm actually eating enough.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, yeah, everything else is revolved around my recovery, performance, and how it's going to affect the next training session. And, I'll get home and I'll eat lunch and I'll throw my recovery boots on and I'm focused on that. I have a wedding in August and I haven't planned my wedding. Like, I'll tell you that much. My wedding has been planned by my future husband, who has done probably 95% of the wedding planning. And he told me, he's like, the CrossFit Games are, that's your focus. And it's so hard to focus on anything else for me. But he's planned the wedding. It's so embarrassing to say.
You can hire people for that.
My entire day is that. When I'm not competing or when I'm not training, I think I find a lot of just joy in just spending time with my fiance Al and my friends in simple things. Literally, it's not going out, it's just going to the beach, it's going to the pool, it's sitting in the steam room. Like, it is like, maybe we go and maybe play a little board game every now and then, but yeah, that's really the thing that just relaxes us for right now. And every season's different. Leading up to the games, you're not really doing much outside of the gym. In the off season, maybe you find yourself enjoying life a little bit more. You go out a little bit more. You go to a nice restaurant. You go to a nice bar. But right now, leading up to the games, you're like, everything, it revolves around making the next session the most successful session.
Yeah, I was just I have a close friend of mine who's a weightlifter, and she came fourth in the Olympics. Obviously pretty damn good.
Decent.
Yeah, that's decent. But one thing that amazes me with her is that she's so able to be like 100% focused, but when she goes into training, it's like this, that she put, she pulls the switch. There's something else, but she doesn't even look at her training program before she enters the gym.
Interesting.
It's crazy because but she has a negative thing connected to that, because if she starts to visualize about what she's gonna do in the gym, she thinks about breaking her elbow. If she would visualize snatch, she's gonna think about all the bad things that's gonna happen. So therefore she just procrastinates, and then looks fun. Then she heads into the gym and she makes like 150% of that session. But when she leaves, she switches her mentality off and does a lot of other things. But she's slow. She's serious about it, but it's like
she can disconnect from it.
Yeah, in a way. And I think it's not that she's not disciplined. She's 100% disciplined. But it's like how she balances life. I admire that, because I think most are not able to do it. And I think that's one of the reasons that she got to the Olympics. Plays pretty well from such a small country as Sweden in weightlifting. She has no competitors at her level in Sweden. She is actually the best weightlifter in Sweden since the 1970s in all categories, like all.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
but it's like, to look her up. What's her name?
Patricia Stennes.
I'm gonna have to look her up. See, that what you said, I think is so important, because you hear about, the greats of every sport. At some point, there's always some documentary that comes out of the LeBron James, the Kobe Bryant, the Matt Fraser, CrossFit. They say, these were my keys to my success. And if you want to win, you have to essentially give up all these things, or you can't do all these things, or you have to follow this specific routine. And if you're not doing this, you don't want it enough, or you're not disciplined enough. And I don't think that's true. I think every human being, just as every human being is different, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, every great athlete has their version of what it takes to be successful, by their own definition. I think every athlete needs to do what makes them happy, what makes them the most successful, what keeps them mentally the healthiest in their sport, in their relationships. And I don't think it's this cookie cutter, like, if you want to win, this is what you got to do. You got to wake up at 4. You got to say no to your relationships. You got to, say yes to only doing these couple things. And I've never agreed with any of that. And there's a reason that there's a lot of athletes that also burn out. There's incredible athletes that are the best in their respective sports that burnt out. And it comes to show that people need balance, and the successful people, or the people that, you know, win championships and all those things, they say that there's no balance, but those are the same people that probably have broken a lot of relationships in their life. And at the end of the day, what happens when you're not an athlete anymore? You're left with how you made people feel, right? The relationships that you've, you know, broken or created, right? And there's something after that comes, and if you don't know what that thing is, you could be left as a broken athlete after your sport, and that's very dangerous, and it's very sad. So I think everyone should find whatever just makes them successful and happy and gives them, you know, that purpose. And sometimes you see some great athletes, they compete so well because they're filled with purpose. Maybe it's their kids, right? You see, I could think of so many athletes that maybe their moms and their dads, and like, they're not competing just to win. They're competing because they have a family and they have kids, and they want to set an example, and they want to teach some great lessons ahead. And that is so much more valuable than winning at all costs.
It's the bigger picture.
I'm gonna just quickly share a little thing about do you know who Dan John is?
Dan John?
No. All right. It's because I'm old, I know him, but it's just so I think this picture tells a lot about it. Like, you know, the pray and play thing and work rest he's an advocate of, like, for every hour you put into, you know, work, you need to put in the adequate amount of rest with your family, you know, maybe not with your family, and stuff. And if you play a lot,
depends on how old your kids are.
Yeah, you need to play a lot. And I think it's he's written many books. He's a great coach. He's from Utah. That's a great
article. You have to send it through. I definitely want to read that.
Ooh,
and everyone's balance is different too. It's not going to be, you know, 25, 25, 25, 25. Sometimes you got to give a little bit more somewhere else. But as long as the things that are important to you still, you know, you're still able to give attention and time to. And some days are more than others, some days are less than others, and that's okay. And I think that's just no different than a relationship. Like, a relationship, I've very quickly realized that it's not, you know, half and half. It's not, you do 50% of the work, I'm going to do 50% of the work, and together we are 100. We are one. Like, it's just not that. This year, you know, my fiance is taking about 95% of the wedding planning, and I'm like, I got 5% in me right now, and that's okay. And you learn
flowers.
But after the wedding, I'm gonna take care of some things, like but that's just how it is. And I think that's just that's just life. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's everything that makes life interesting, and there's so much you learn from that. And I think balance could be defined in a million different ways to a million different people. But at the end of the day, I think if you're able to end the day being like, you know, I have good relationships, I'm happy and healthy, or maybe I'm not happy and healthy and I'm looking for help, and I'm continuing to push on forward, then things are going still in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely.
So is there a person or a thing that you can hear while competing? Is it someone's voice, or is it some kind of music or something?
Usually, you know what, very quickly I heard my fiance in the stands. I'll hear him cheering, and so if we're talking about a very specific thing, I could sometimes even hear people like him in the stands, like just like scream. And I enjoy looking, like, when I compete, one of the things that I realized that when other girls compete, and maybe sometimes guys too, is when they walk out to the floor, they don't look around. Like, they do not look around. They walk to their mats, they look down at the floor, and there's people cheering for you. And like, in my mind, I'm like, there's people that are screaming your name, wearing your t-shirt, pulling for you, that don't even know you, and you're not even going to look around and try to acknowledge. So that's one thing. I try to look out and enjoy and just like take it in every event. I think that's so special. And sometimes you hear, like, you know, the cheers and the music. Typically, you know, when you start to compete, you kind of just, that's your focus, and that's when you kind of black out. There's
So-
a couple things that I do tell myself though when I am competing, when I kind of get down. And one of those, I feel like everyone needs to latch on maybe into like a different mantra when things are hard. The first event, the sled wasn't moving. So
Wow,
the thing
yeah.
that I don't know if you guys even got to watch that one, but the sleds weren't budging, that floor, the mat, like something was just so off. And the only thing that I kept saying in my head, I was like, do not stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. Like pulling, don't stop. And I could hear my voice in my head. But yeah, there's certain things in certain situations and events where I try to like have a very good self-talk mantra. And that's the only thing that I'm focusing on. When I was failing my pirouettes, I told myself, breathe. Like I would like fail, look at my clock. Okay, breathe. Okay. And then I would, focus on the next thing. But yeah, sometimes I hear a voice in my head. Sometimes I hear people cheering. Most of the time I don't hear the music.
The mantra is good because you can only think about one thing at the same time. So if you want to keep your negative thoughts out, you can have the mantra, just breathe.
Exactly.
Just breathe. It's going to be fine. Just breathe, whatever. It's really good.
There's so much noise going on that you have to lock into one thing. Because it could get to you pretty bad. And I think you could sometimes see the difference between people like that's just kind of, the athletes that have been doing it for a while. You could see like their calm and their composure, and you could see the athletes that despite whatever's going on physically, they're still able to stay calm and composed. And it's not because anything other than they're very good at talking to themselves through, a hard situation, or maybe they're failing something. And sometimes that just comes with the experience of it too.
Maybe some athletes, I've seen this been talked about, they get overexcited, they rush into things, they go too fast in the beginning and so on. Maybe they need to seal themselves off from the from all the energy from the crowd and so on.
Yeah, that happens a lot, huh? I usually don't pay attention to it. I usually have perspective, like people watching, they're like, man, why did that person just go out that hot? They must have not practiced that event or something, right? That's your first thought. And like, no, they probably ran through that event a couple times, but sometimes it gets to, you're right. Sometimes it does get to you, like the adrenaline, the crowd, the noise, maybe the expectation. Sometimes people read, which I don't. I've never been one to, read articles about what people are trying to say about me not qualifying or qualifying, not qualifying. Until after I read or I heard like, oh, Fee's not going to make it this year. She's not even, second day is going to be her worst day. She's so weak. She's not good at the, some people like really read into those things. So then they're like, oh, I need to prove that person wrong, or I need to prove, those people a different way. And that could either help you, which is great, or it either like really, really negatively affects you.
Yeah.
But
depends on who you are, I think.
I'm a bit curious about your sports background. What did you do before CrossFit?
So before CrossFit, I was in volleyball my entire life. Like as much as I could, have it in my life. I always played with the boys outside. So like growing up, I was born in Cleveland, but I grew up in a small town called Boardman, Ohio. And it's out of it's a suburb of Youngstown, Ohio, here probably an hour and a half away from Cleveland, Ohio here. And I grew up playing. I just remember when I was younger, I always wanted to play outside. My mom would tell me to not play with the boys as much because they're boys. It's like at the time, I don't know if it was the same like with anybody else, but at the time it's like, no, girls play with girls and boys play with boys. Like playing football is too rough. Playing baseball was too. And I told my mom, like, no, Mom, I want to play. Like they're having fun. Like I don't want to like play with dolls. I don't want to be inside. And so I always play like my brother. I have an older brother. He's just 11 months older, but we were very close growing up, and we would just play in the neighborhood. We would play games. We would play around the entire neighborhood. football, baseball, kickball. We would be climbing trees. We would be in the woods doing things like our moms told us not to do, like everything. And eventually, so I've always loved sports. And then eventually I got into middle school and I really loved volleyball. Loved volleyball. And I did 1 year of travel volleyball. And my crazy goal as a kid, I would watch, the Olympics. I would watch the professional volleyball athletes. And I would just, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be an Olympian. I want to be a professional volleyball player. I want to go to collegiate volleyball. And that was just a, internal goal. But I never had the chance to really pursue it in a way where as you're young, when you're young, you really need to be heavily involved in conditioning, traveling, the travel teams, the off-season games, all those things that I didn't get a chance to do. I really just played during the season, during high school, public high school, and then that was it. And the reason I didn't have the chance is actually my family is also very heavily involved in music. So my entire life growing up, I played the violin, and I started when I was 4. And I actually stopped playing when I was 18, but every weekend was violin, and every weekend in sports is sports. Like, and my dad was like, well, you could do both. I was like, no, you can't do both because sports are on the weekend and games are on the weekend and traveling's on the weekend. So I remember when I was younger, we would wake up at like 5 in the morning, 5:30. We were 4, 5, 6 years old, and we would get up and we would get our music and our violin, and we would travel to Cleveland, and we had private lessons at the Cleveland Institute of Music. We had music theory lessons at the Music Settlement. Sometimes we had 2 private lessons a day, and sometimes we had a chamber group or orchestra group. And then late at night on a Saturday night, while other kids are, doing kid things, my dad bought Severance Hall, like the symphony. Cleveland Symphony is one of the best symphonies in the world. He bought tickets to the concert. So we would have an entire day of music classes. And then, you have an 8 p.m., 7 p.m. concert that goes until, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. And my mom would dress us in like these beautiful little dresses. And you got 4, 5, 6-year-olds sitting front row center at the Cleveland Symphony. And that was my childhood growing up. That was it for 14, 15 years.
I'm thinking discipline when you talk about this.
I'm
a former musician myself, and I do not practice this because I have not got the discipline thing down whatsoever.
I would avoid practicing my violin because I wanted to just play outside. Like,
sure.
Like I remember I would be playing outside and I would just hear my mom from the porch, and I would be, maybe a couple driveways away, and time to practice your violin. Your father's going to be home. You got to practice your violin. And, I remember it was just so, and I have such an appreciation for music. I really do. But you do that for so long. And when you're a kid, you just want to play. And it kind of made me very much burn out, and it made me hate the violin. I hated it because it took me away from the things that I wanted to do. So that really was my childhood. And even though I was always so much more geared towards athletics, I didn't have that. And I think like part of why I compete is actually because like this is the first time that I get to do a sport that I want on my own time. I get to do it as intensely as I want to. No one's forcing me to do anything. And I think that's why I've taken on the compete. That's one of the reasons that I've taken on competing. And I have a gratitude for it because I never had that chance as a kid. And now I have it. And now that I have it, I want to like really treat it special. But I do, I love the experiences that I've had as a kid. And I'm so grateful for my dad. He instilled a lot of good lessons and a lot of discipline. And even though something's hard, you keep on. And there's almost like a discipline in caring for the little things. And as a musician, you realize that it is in how well you practice and how well you prepare your scales and how slowly you are able to, practice your different pieces to eventually play some beautiful piece, right? And that kind of reminds me of sports, is like, in order to perform at the highest level or to do great things in your sport, you have to be able to do the fundamentals super, super, super well, or else you can't succeed, or you won't
Master
be able to.
the basics.
And it's master the basics.
Mm.
I had a cardboard box as a violin when I first started, and it was inside, there was a fruit roll-up. So you had to master this cardboard box, and it was a cardboard box, and there was a couple like cardboard, paper rolls as the neck of the violin. And after like a year, and you had to like, work on your hand position and work on your elbow position, and you had to, work on your opposite arm where your bow would be. And after you've mastered that, you earned your fruit roll-up.
Oh.
That's incentive. That would have worked on me now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who do you think inspired you to become the person you are today when you were like 14, 15? Because we probably do have these mentors. We only realize we had mentors when we get older, but during that, but if you look back, what do you think?
I just had this conversation with Sophie, and I get that.
Cool.
I get that question a lot, and I think at first you're like, oh, I want to be like that person, or I want to achieve, what that person achieved. And I think around when I was 14, 15, that was like a hard season in my 14-year-old life, because I was very consumed with being skinny and being small and being petite and looking a certain way. There's just those pressures at that time, and everyone guys experience it as well. And it just happened to be that season. And I remember not eating. I remember losing, my period. My hair was thinning, and all I wanted to do was just like be skinny and like feel good and look good. And I was just so obsessed with that. And I would always look at other girls and be like, man, what does it take to be confident? Man, I wanted to be confident so bad. And I get emotional because it was just a very hard time. I didn't have, and I don't have, an older sister. And I always wanted to like have someone to like look up to as an older sister. And in college, I experienced something very hard that I don't share. But anyways, so at some point I had to be that person to look up to, right? So I had to learn a lot about resilience and taking steps forward, and started to focus on what do I need to do to just be strong and be healthy for me, not for anyone else. And in college, my first year, that's kind of when I started CrossFit. And I took it on to be part of a community and explore that community and really like latch on to good people. And good people brought me in, and they brought me along, and I started to develop a passion for like truly what it means to like feel good and be well and feel strong and do good things for yourself. And the more that I got involved, slowly but surely, the confidence starts to build. I started to truly love myself again. And yeah, so it's like I look back who I was now when I was 14, and I look who I am today. And I'm just like, man, I looked up to like me, like the future me, the older me, the wiser me, the confident me. That's who I always wished to become. And I'm 28 now, and I hope my future, the girl that I look up to, in a future, hopefully that's the 38-year-old me. She's a beautiful mom with beautiful kids and teaching them like great things. And like, I want to look up to like the future me in 10 years. And yeah, that's always been something that I've held very close to my heart, and I get emotional of it because those emotions never go away. Like those experiences, feelings that you had when you were down or very sad, they don't go away, but they definitely add fuel to when things are hard again. And things are always hard, and then they get easy, and then they get hard again. And and so you always got to think back on the girl that you would look up to you today. So Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking about I also had like a rough periods for sure, and I guess most have, but I think I wouldn't have been the person I've been today if I didn't have like my sensei in martial arts, and if I didn't have like, I think my middle grade teacher, he was awesome, and obviously I think my father, even though he was distant, he's always been like a great figure for me, a role model. But it's like, I think what I was fishing for is, even though it might only have been for like a week or like a month or so, but by talking to a lot of people throughout the years, I am 45 still, so I have some experience. But so for what I've seen is that somewhere along the point in your life, there's someone there that pulls you up and can change your course in a way. And I guess from what I'm hearing is maybe that happened when you attended CrossFit and you got into that sense of community. Maybe not one person, but maybe like sort of an avatar of that box, maybe.
Yeah,
it was
the community. And it was never one person. It was always just the environment pulls you out. Like it pulls like a good environment pulls really good things out of you. And if you keep going to that environment, you'll realize all the great things that you can do and realize and accomplish. And I think that's so important to, if you're ever down on yourself or ever doubting yourself, like just lean on good people and lean on a good community. And eventually, they pull you out. And sometimes it's just maybe one person and you just latch onto them, you lean on them, they help you through. And sometimes it's an entire, community of people in a good, in a good space. For me, it was CrossFit. For other people, it's other things. But I think that's why CrossFit's so special. I never saw myself competing as a professional athlete. I've always just been a member. I've always been someone that just looked forward to attending class. Not because it gave me a great workout, but it was just like the hour that I just like needed when the day was hard, or when I was being hard on myself, or when I was sad. You go to your community and things are good again. And it's very special. You got some good things over here.
Definitely.
Sorry guys for making a total detour into it feels like entire life here, but
I tell somebody this all the time. I cannot talk about like hard things without shedding a couple tears. Like you guys get like all of it.
That's a good thing. That's a good
Every
thing.
Time.
I cry all the time. I totally understand. So
I never cry.
Yeah,
I should maybe, but
I tell myself, don't cry, you can do it, That's when you're
don't look at the
something.
pink elephant.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's the I think I saw a beautiful video of an actor saying it, but someone said like tears are always just unexpressed emotions that you never got a chance to express. So
wow.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's a good perspective for sure.
Yeah. So maybe head a little bit back to the CrossFit Games, a bit about that. So how's the period now looking for you? I mean, what are you going to? Obviously, you took us through that you're going through in more intensity, but I mean, like, where are you at? Are you going to head back to Florida so soon to get back?
Yeah, so we got about six weeks until the games. So exciting! Not a lot of time. Every day is just you kind of just take it day by day. But right now, Sunday, I head back to Naples, and this is kind of the time of the season where we start to get outside a lot more. We start to head to the track, we start to head to the trails, we start to on our bikes again. We start, if we do some, I know we're gonna do some open water swimming sessions in the ocean. So that'll be fun. So you just start to do more non-gym things, which is obviously CrossFit Games. Like CrossFit Games, you're doing all the implements that you typically can't even do inside the gym walls. So that's kind of where we try to expose ourselves and train. And sometimes obstacles, you never know what's going to happen. But like remember the obstacle course a couple years ago, like you really start to try to involve yourself in things that maybe take a lot more athleticism than they do actual fitness. So that's always the fun part of training, and to be able to do that with a good core training group, is just like, I can't imagine doing this alone, like by myself, with no one around, no one to push. So we really have a good group, and at our boot camp, it's Dallin Pepper, it's Danielle Brandon, it's Emma Carey, it's James Sprague, and myself. And actually, all 5 of us qualified outside of or in at the semifinals.
It's amazing.
And
that's crazy.
I told her, I was like, we're like the CrossFit version of the Fab Five. Right? Seriously, the Fit Five. But so we all qualified this year, and now we all get to be training partners to each other, and hopefully, and even we might even have some simulations, some games weekend simulations, which a simulation is essentially, we're not focusing on training as much as we are, doing things for time, doing things as a performance, working on strategy, practicing like, as if we were competing on the floor. Where the difference in training is like, sometimes you mess around with multiple strategies within a training session. Sometimes you look to redline to just see what's too much too soon. So there's a lot more of that going on, and a lot more being outside.
You were on the demo team last year, weren't you?
Yes. Yeah. I was invited to be on the demo team. I was there for, like 12 days, I think.
Wow.
10 days. Something
Did
like
you learn anything from that might help you prepare for the games this year, like just how it works, how they make the events, what's probably gonna happen, what did they use that didn't come with, and so on? Did you find anything like that?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway that I learned from working alongside Boz and just hearing him talk about, his expectations and what's to come and how he wants to test certain things. My biggest takeaway was there's a common theme, and the theme had been to not stop exploring and playing with movement. And I think a lot of us have very much locked into what's been done. So that's what you prepare. You prepare for the things that have been done. What's been posted on, sometimes people don't even check the CrossFit Games or CrossFit.com website. And I'll tell you, someone like Scott is as knowledgeable, as incredible as he is because he's actually always going back to the foundation of CrossFit. And there's little things that they even put out on their website that eventually came up that some people weren't prepared for. But yeah, Boz is very much into playing, exploring, just have fun with your fitness. Don't just do things that have been done in the open or in the games, trying to think of, how can I take this movement and make it harder? How can I take this movement and make it different? And you started to see that last year. You started to see we've always done pegboards with our legs. Now we're doing legless pegboards. We've always done handstand walking forward and over and under, obstacles. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to handstand walk backwards or, zigzag, or, now you have pirouettes, and now you have all the different variations of a gymnastics. I saw a pegboard horizontally on a gym wall actually yesterday. And I'm like, who's to say that we can't do, pegboard climbs going in a different direction, So that was my biggest takeaway, being on demo team and, getting a chance to chat with the team and Boz. So it'll be cool to see like what they test and how many things did we get right in training and how many things did we, essentially prepare the best we could for. And your hope is that even if you didn't practice a certain skill that's presented, you've created kind of an awareness within yourself athletically that you could still perform a skill, even if it's new. You get to, you've played enough with movement to be able to figure it out.
So you think it's like, have you done that? Have you taken specific movements that are common and just taken them to the next level in your training? Have you explored that stuff?
Matt is such an incredible coach, Matt Torres, and he's very strategic, and he thinks ahead, and he explores a lot and learns from past history, but also like what's to come. So he's had us do, things that like we're not going to see it in the open. We're not going to see it in quarterfinals. And we're definitely not going to see certain movements that we've been training in semifinals. But he's been implementing, you know, that kind of programming within our training more as like practice skills and play time. So I love how within our training routine, it's not just, let's just work out, let's just do a bunch of workouts. There are moments where we get to play, we get to practice, we get to explore our bodies, you know, do some ring work in a different way that's not a muscle up. Like everyone just knows the rings to be a tool to use for muscle ups. And maybe one day they'll come out with something else and we'll have to figure it out. So he's done a really good job, and, you know, it's not easy, and we're not elite gymnasts over here, but it's cool to have the opportunity to play, where a couple of years ago I was just doing CrossFit workouts. Like it was just CrossFit metcons, metcon after metcon after metcon after, you know, conditioning, doing the same thing. So it's been different being with him, definitely.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see some press to handstand work this games.
I know. Oh my God, I've been working on it, and I still use the wall and so many things, but you know, it gives you an appreciation for, I mean, the press to handstand is a fundamental movement of elite gymnastics. And you're looking at this movement of, how is this a fundamental movement? It is so hard. The fundamentals of every sport, if you do it well enough, you'll realize how hard the fundamentals are. They should be very hard. They should be very tough.
Yeah, it took me a long time to get that skill. It's crazy.
So
and it's like, but you know, 6-year-old girls can do it. It's like, so I think that's the thing you do, you know, if you do it if you grew up with artistic gymnastics, then it's basic, but for an adult it's far from basic.
Far from basic. And you try to do that as a non-gymnast, and almost like it's even harder to learn it. It's actually harder to learn it when maybe you've been exposed to so many years of different styles of training, where you almost have your way of doing things, and you have to forget about all those bad habits, and you have to start fresh off a clean slate. That's very hard to do the older you get.
It is.
That's been very hard. But then you have someone like Danielle, who is an elite gymnast herself. So I'll ask her, be like, okay, what would be your coaching cue to do this or this? So I get to bring the gymnastics coach out of her every now and then to help me.
But do they know? I mean,
she does.
Most of the time when you talk to like elite gymnasts, it's like because they've been doing it for so many years, it's like they don't have a true clue. I mean, unless they're coaches, but it's like, but you know, I mean, gymnastics is like one of the most curriculum based, you know, sports. It's like they know exactly what you're gonna do when you're 7, 8, 9, 10. You're like for like 15 years or so. It's like so it's not maybe not like that little cue. It's like, you know, it's all the years.
Yeah,
you know,
you're right. It's one of those few sports that almost has. There's not a lot of sports that have levels the way that gymnastics.
Exactly.
Like any other sport, even if you want to start, I mean, there's people that, you know, maybe start picking up Olympic weightlifting, you know, and it's not like they've been doing it since they were 4. They pick it up, they learn, you know, some of the technique and eventually build. But gymnastics is just so specific to like your awareness and your strength and your flexibility, and you develop that athleticism for years and years and years, and to try to do that when on crunch time within a couple of weeks of time is not the easiest thing.
Piece of cake. Just do it.
You're gonna do fine.
So when you see someone, so people got to know, like when they see someone do any kind of gymnastics, just know how long it takes to actually develop those things. Years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's just say thanks to Fee for an amazing conversation.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. We talked a little bit about everything.
Yeah, that hour plus, I think, went by real fast.
Wow. Oh my gosh, it did.
I think.
This is the first time that I looked at the clock, you guys. This is how present we all were.
Yeah.
Thank you for such a great conversation.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And I'll see you next time.